Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Read Longyear webinar. This is part of a series of regular webinars that we're doing with clients and friends of Read Longyear and other professionals that we work with in the community. So I'm excited to have everyone here. I had a reminder that this week is National Estate Planning Awareness Week, and reminded of the importance of folks updating their estate plan, making sure that their powers of attorney are current and reflect the agents that they want to handle uh, and manage affairs should they become incapacitated or need assistance, as well as the importance of healthcare directives and living wills. So for all of you listening today, just a reminder about taking a look at your documents. And if you haven't done your planning documents, I do encourage you to be proactive and get started on those. Uh, Unfortunately, we never know quite when incapacity may occur or the need for the documents to be in place. So important to do that. So with that thought in mind, our first presenter is my colleague, Carla Calogero, who I think many of you know and have worked with. Carla practices in the area of estate planning, personal estate planning, as well as probate, conservatorships, and related trust matters. And in particular, Carla brings with her background in bioethics. She has a master's in bioethics, as well as her role as a teacher, science teacher before going to law school. So I think she's particularly well versed in educating clients about the importance of planning. Today, Carla's going to be talking about care management, and I'll stop my ramble and let Carla get started. So, Carla.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, everyone, for being with us today. Just getting things started here. Thank you for your patience. As Mike said, I will talk about care management today, and what aging clients and their loved ones should understand about professional care management services. Next week is Halloween, and I know that Greg and Meng are going to scare you a little bit with the cybersecurity information they're going to give us in a bit. And perhaps, although we're familiar with these figures, they might be a little scary or alarming to us, but I do want to set the context of a discussion of care management. So the average life expectancy for Americans is 80 years for females and about 75 years for males. The fact is that over 2/3 of us will require assistance with our care and activities of daily living due to age, disease, or injury. And in addition to that, most people will need care and long-term care services for 3 years or more. In terms of dementia specifically, I think we understand that it seems to be a growing epidemic even in America and worldwide. Currently, there are about 6.9 million Americans with a dementia diagnosis who are living with dementia. And for those who are between the ages of 65 and 74, about 26% of those have dementia. And the percentages, of course, increase as age increases, and 75 to 84 year-old age bracket, just about 38% of our population has dementia. And of course, we will be that age or maybe approaching that age ourselves. The other context and concern, frankly, is that the costs of in-home care and long-term care, LTC services, is increasing rapidly. So in Washington, we have statistics or figures rather from Genworth, and these are 2023. I'm not going to read the numbers to you. You can take a quick glance. We're talking about home health care, adult day health care, assisted living facility care, and then nursing home care, which would include memory care. And what you can see is that really at any level or context of care, the numbers are astounding. This is, by the way, monthly costs of care in these different settings. Our healthcare system is becoming more complex, more fractionalized, more difficult to navigate. And in terms of caregivers who are assisting their loved ones in accessing and navigating the healthcare system, more than 2/3 of caregivers report that coordinating healthcare is either somewhat or very stressful. And likewise, or similarly, more than half of the caregivers report that navigating the healthcare system is somewhat or very difficult. This is an image from the Alzheimer's Association, which just tries to kind of get at understanding or at least visualizing what it may be like for a person receiving care and their caregiver. There's the primary caregiver, there's many specialists perhaps, there's social services, there's medication management, there may be occupational therapy, all sorts of different services and care to access. And this isn't even really looking at navigating long-term care residential options. So my point, of course, is that it is very difficult for many people, whether themselves or loved ones, to navigate and provide care to themselves or to their loved ones. So that's where perhaps care management comes in. I will use the term senior care management, senior referring to the population that are served by the care management. The term senior is relatively new. You may be familiar with the term geriatric care management or gerontology, sort of focusing on that geriatric description, and I think senior care management is the term of preference more so these days. Senior care management, though, even though senior is in the title of the type of services and the professionals who provide these services, senior care management is not just for the individual necessarily. It is very often for caregivers and family members, in addition to or even on their own in terms of managing the care. So it's sort of the package of care management that is most common, perhaps the model, I should say, is that a care manager will do a comprehensive care needs assessment. They'll provide a comprehensive plan of care, including options and cost. They will identify and help access resources and services in the community. They will coordinate care, communicate with professionals and other care and medical providers, and they will provide advocacy services on behalf of the individual. And then alongside this, or just inherent in this process, is support and education for the individual and perhaps family members. Now, the plan of care, I'll spend a little bit more time discussing. The plan of care is going to be a multi-page document. It could be 8 pages, it could be 14 pages, and it will, or it should, address many factors of care and of need. So certainly healthcare, medical care, residential needs, but also social, emotional, and sort of a more holistic look at what the person's needs are now and what options and costs are for addressing those needs now and in the future. There are many people, as I've already mentioned, who may hire a care manager. Of course, an individual can hire a care manager for themselves. Spouses may hire a care manager. Other primary caregivers, if not the spouse, may work with the care manager. Family members and loved ones of someone who is experiencing a disability or a life-limiting condition or disease, they may work with a care manager to educate themselves and understand what is going on, what may occur. And care managers do often work with or consult with family members and loved ones. And then agents under healthcare and financial powers of attorney may also engage care managers to assist in care management and care coordination and identification of resources. So there are sort of a few points in a person's life where it may be necessary to work with a care manager, or it may be desirable to work with a care manager. And, you know, our model here at Reed Longyear is proactive planning. And I know that more and more care management agencies are working with people in proactive planning. And so what this means or could look like is that, well, individuals and couples who want to learn more about residential and long-term care options in advance of any disease or disability may consult with a care management company or care manager. For example, there are more and more solo aging folks out in our community, and that we may be ourselves. And so some of these people are consulting with care managers to try to identify what their options are and maybe make a plan for that solo aging process. Perhaps a person or couple is considering downsizing and maybe moving into a retirement community or continuing care community. Care managers will work with couples at this point and help them identify options and explore costs of different options. Perhaps someone who has a family history of dementia or other degenerative disease may want to talk with a care manager, consult with a care manager in advance of any diagnosis. Another point at which it may be helpful to engage with a care manager is at that onset or at that diagnosis. So here I'm talking about an early diagnosis or at least early in the stage of the disease, and wanting to understand what the disease progress, prognosis, transitions might be ahead in their future, and sort of be primes for when there is that increase in care needs. And it's also helpful, or could be helpful at this stage, before care or assistance is really more at the forefront in terms of a need. It could be helpful to establish a relationship with a care manager or care management company in anticipation of increasing needs. And many care managers are called in when there's a crisis, to deal with the crisis, to manage the crisis, and to assist the individual and loved ones in getting through the crisis. So, for example, an individual may experience a fall, perhaps related brain injury. There may be hospitalization, unexpected hospitalization. There may be new behaviors that require sort of an immediate attention and plan, such as aggressive or violent behaviors with folks with dementia. There could be a point at which the family disagreement, which has been stewing, comes to the forefront, erupts, and the family can't come together and agree on a decision that has to be made. Care managers can come in and assist with that process. And then if they come in at a crisis or to deal with existing or anticipated transition, it could be a short-term engagement, it could be a short-term consultation, or it could result in ongoing care management services. And so, of course, a lot of care management services are around that ongoing and long-term care management relationship. There are so many different types of services that care managers and care management companies can provide. Not all care managers or care management services provide all of these services or offer all of these services, but many provide most. And I'm not necessarily going to read through all of these services. We'll pause here for a moment and take a look. But generally, of course, like I said before, the basic model is an assessment, a plan of care, and then implementing that plan of care, which can include any number of particular individualized services based on the needs and the plan of care. I'd say that planning and implementing and coordination are really at the heart of care management. So whether it's a crisis, whether it's ongoing, or just on a consultation basis, that assessment, plan, and then coordination and advocacy are really at the heart of most care management services. Care managers can assist with discharge planning from a hospital or skilled nursing facility. They can assist in relocation. For example, if a daughter or a family is bringing mom out to live closer to the family, and they need the expertise and the local knowledge and connections that a care manager has. Care managers do assist in relocation planning and implementation. For loved ones or caregivers or healthcare agents under powers of attorney who may be out of state, care management companies or care managers can provide that sort of boots on the ground oversight and management that the loved one wants to be able to provide but can't be here all the time to do so. Some care management companies offer what's called community engagement, which isn't strictly care management, but is a service that helps to identify ways in which the senior can have more engagement in the community. So adult day health or enrichment programs, or even companionship to some of these activities and resources in the community. Okay, I know you all have been thinking while I've been speaking, how is this paid for and who pays for it? And the fact is that care management services are not covered by insurance. They're not covered under Medicare. They're almost rarely covered under long-term care insurance. If a person is receiving Medicaid, state-based long-term care services, no care management services in this capacity are paid for under Medicaid. And so that means that payment is out of pocket. And obviously, most of our populations may not be able to afford ongoing care management. But I will make a plug for sort of the one-time consultation to get a better understanding of your circumstances as well worth the investment. Quickly want to make sure we understand that care managers do not provide direct caregiving services. Those are the services of caregivers or home health aides. Care managers are not medical care providers. And apologize for the typo there. Care managers are not legal fiduciaries, meaning they are not and most typically would not serve under a power of attorney. I see Mike there. I'm going to jump through a couple more slides. I only have a few. And of course, our slides will be available to everyone after the program. But I do want to just quickly talk about who senior care managers are, what their background is. They could have a background in social work, gerontology, mental health, nursing, or psychology, with an emphasis in elder care and the health of older adults. They should be certified, meaning that they've gone beyond that education to receive a certification. And here are the types of certifications they may receive. Many care managers go on to become aging life care professionals, which is a higher level of accreditation as a senior care manager. And then a couple of benefits of care management may be, of course, improvement in quality of life and clinical outcomes, potential cost savings of planning, and decrease in caregiver and family stress and burnout. And then lastly, finding a senior care manager. I would recommend that you go to Aging Life Care Association. There's a click up at the right corner for finding a life care expert. And many of us, including myself and Mike, also regularly work with care managers, and we could talk to you more about those available in our community. Thank you. You're muted.
Yep. Thank you, Carla. That was great and so informative, and there's so much information to consider. And really, as Carla mentioned, we really take the position of proactive planning because we think it's more efficient and probably more cost effective to actually consider these issues ahead of time rather than having to deal with crisis management. And Carla's comments and the slides will be available on our website in probably about a week. It takes about a week for us to make any edits and upload the materials to the website. So thank you, Carla. That was great.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lesley Novotny, and Lesley travels in both the world of estate planning and in family law. And so she has the perspective and experience of someone that sees what happens when people don't plan and they may end up in litigation over property issues in a probate. And then she also, when things don't work out for a couple and they separate, how those types of issues are dealt with. So today, Lesley is going to be talking about cohabitation agreements. I don't know, statistically, Lesley, maybe you can share with us the number of people that don't marry but cohabitate and kind of what that plays out to be, and then just kind of take a deep dive here into cohabitation agreements. So Lesley, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Well, now I'm wishing I would have looked up the statistics. I don't I don't know what the statistics are, but I think more and more people are not getting married. So we are seeing that more and more often. So that's why these are becoming something that we're doing more of for sure. And anyone who was here at our last webinar, when we got started talking about these types of agreements, more in the marriage sense, and ran out of time, but we definitely are starting to see a lot more people living together, not getting married. And in our state, Washington, we have a community property state. And now that more people are not getting married, Washington state has started to have a doctrine that provides for that. So I think to start, I'm going to just go over the community property rules really quickly because it's a basis for what we're going to talk about. And essentially in Washington, when you're married, you acquire property as a married couple that is called community property. And when married couples are earning income, that becomes community property, which means that the community property is owned by both spouses equally. And that is salary, bonuses, RSUs, stock, retirement options, anything that's earned during the course of the marriage, any property that's purchased with community funds, and then also anything that you inherit that you place in a joint bank account. Additionally, any debts that are acquired during the marriage or any liabilities acquired during the marriage. That's called jointly owned property. And so that means that each spouse immediately owns an undivided 1/2 interest in all of that property. That means each spouse acting alone can manage or control the community property. Separate property is any gifts, inheritance, property that is acquired prior to the relationship or after the parties separate. and that remains separate property of the parties. Any money deposited in bank accounts before the marriage, or if you have property that you keep separate the entire time, that would be separate property. So under default Washington law, the separate property all stays separate, and each spouse can manage that property separate from the other party. So it is possible to commingle the assets and change the character. So if you put your separate property money into a commingled bank account with your community property, you can change the character of that property and turn it into community property. And then it would be counted as community property if you were to divorce or separate. So the reason that I'm bringing all of this up is because you can, if you're in a committed, intimate relationship, which means if you're living with someone in a marriage-like relationship in Washington now, there's a doctrine called committed intimate relationship. So what is this CIR, as we call it in Washington? It's a stable marital-like relationship where both parties are cohabitating with the knowledge that a marriage does not exist between them. So there's a lot of history in this doctrine. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but essentially the courts have developed this doctrine because they were interested in protecting unmarried couples who acquire property while living together, just like a marriage, but they are not actually married under state law. So they wanted to recognize the relationship and the acquiring of property if the parties separate or one of the partners dies. So they want to be fair about the assets acquired so that one party is not unjustly enriched at the end of the relationship. So in Washington, the courts apply community property principles to these committed intimate relationships, and they call it community-like property. So at the end of a CIR, and I'm just going to probably go back and forth between committed intimate relationship and CIR because that's, the courts will call it that too, CIR. The court will divide the property similar to a divorce, which is dividing up the community-like assets in an equitable way. There are differences because in community or in CIRs, there's no spousal support. You can't get attorney's fees, and generally they don't consider the separate property of the parties when they're going to distribute the community-like property. And this also applies when one of the partners passes away. The surviving partner does have an interest in the community-like assets, so anything that's been acquired in the relationship while they've been living together. So in order to determine if the CIR exists, the court will weigh several factors, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into the details of that, but the court's going to look at whether they have lived together for a long time, been in a continuous cohabitation, how long the relationship has been, or how long they've been living together. And that could be as much as a year to 5 years. There's been a lot of cases examining that, but it's been short, like a year. Whether they're pooling their resources, engaging in joint projects together, purchasing a home together, maintaining joint accounts. But even if they don't maintain joint accounts, if they're one's paying the power bill and one's paying the light bill, they're engaging in life together, basically. One's paying the groceries. what the intent of the parties are, if they are involved in a marriage-like relationship, referring to each other as partner, or, oh, my spouse, or referring to each other as my life companion, what the purpose of the relationship is, if they're enjoying the benefits of being in a marriage-like situation. So all of those factors will be considered in whether the court finds a committed intimate relationship. So why are we talking about all this? Well, because if a couple is engaged in a CIR, living together, one way to make sure that your financial expectations are honored and understood, a cohabitation agreement, or what sometimes we'll refer to as a committed intimate relationship agreement or CIR agreement, is an option that we would recommend. These agreements can be made in anticipation of living together, or if you're already living together and you see that you're going to be living together for a long time, whether you might get married or not, these agreements are a good option. In the agreements, we will identify all of the couple's assets and liabilities, community-like and separate. We'll determine how you want them to be distributed in the case of separation or death. We'll generally want to include the residence where you live, whether it's been jointly purchased or not, how you would want it to be divided if something were to happen. They're generally similar to other type of relationship agreements that you might be more familiar with, like prenuptial agreements. Same type of enforceability procedures will be taken so that they'll be enforced by the court. I'm not going to get as much into that, but both parties will want to be represented by counsel, and will use the same requirements so that they're held up in court. And why are they helpful? It offers the opportunity for you to have conversations about money, why you would want things the way that you want them, how your property is owned, where you want to have your property, what you want to see it happen, how you want it distributed if you were to separate, how you want your assets and your liabilities to be divided. So if you're in a long-term relationship, it's a good way to make sure that all of your property and assets are placed in a way that you would like them to be, and how you want to share your responsibilities and your debts. And my slides will also be available for you. Thanks.
All right, Lesley, thank you so much. There's so much to think about and cover, and it's really depends on the client, right? Where they have to sit down and talk through the issues and how their cohabitation has worked for them. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So our next presenters are Greg Porter and Meng Yuche, and they'll be talking about cyber fraud and security. And we picked this topic because we're getting more calls and experiences of clients that have been duped or tricked or had to deal with these issues. I think Greg and Ming will probably talk about some of those examples. And, you know, I think we all are aware of it, but they're going to help us better understand what we can do to protect ourselves from those types of incidences. So Greg and Ming, I'll let you get.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Mike. Thank you for the introduction. And as mentioned, my name is Greg, and my fellow attorney Meng Yuchi and I will be presenting on cyber fraud and security. I will be giving a quick overview of some of the common threats and fraud tactics that are prevalent, and then Meng will give you tips and tricks for protecting yourself and your sensitive data. Hopefully this information is helpful for you in protecting your own security, as well as the security of your loved ones, your businesses. And, you know, for some of you, you might have people in your charge as a personal representative, a guardian, or what have you. And so to protect their sensitive information as well. At the outset, it is impossible to understate how prevalent and how lucrative cyber fraud and crime are these days. Cybercrime is at an all-time high, and the trend line is entirely up. Indeed, cybercrime is so profitable that if it were a country, it would have the third highest GDP in the world, behind only the United States and China. And it is expected to become even more profitable, growing by 15% in just the next 2 years, which far outpaces the growth of both the GDP of the United States and China. And technology is making it more pervasive, more sophisticated, and more insidious. AI grabs a lot of headlines for its projected impact on the economy, and you can bet your bottom dollar that AI will become a bigger and bigger player in cybercrime as well. So, for example, the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, tracks reports for fraud of all sorts, namely cyber fraud and cybercrime. And so this is Washington State for April to June of this year, so Q2 2024. This is extremely recent data. And it shows that the number one and number two reports of scams by a long shot are imposter scams, which means that someone has taken your personal data and is using it to pretend to be you, say to open a credit card or to gain access to your accounts or to do other sorts of nefarious tasks. And then identity theft is the other, which can be very similar. Someone gets access or takes your personally identifiable information and then uses that information pretending to be you to get access to your funds, or again, to open something like a credit card in your name that you might not even know about, run up charges that you might be responsible for. So how is cybercrime perpetrated? Now, there's a common misconception that your personal data is on your phone, it's on your computer, and someone hacks into your system. You know, they break through the firewall, they crack your password, and they scrape all your data. Now that happens, and it's entertaining on TV, but the truth is that most cybercrime is perpetrated through social engineering rather than compromising your security. And social engineering is a term of art that means the attacker, the fraudster, tricks the user into giving them access. So it's much less likely that the perpetrator, the fraudster, smashes the proverbial window or kicks down the proverbial door. Most often, they're given the key to the door. How? And why? Well, that's what we're here to talk about. The types of scams and the types of techniques out there by cyber criminals that really trick users into turning over their personal data or inadvertently giving access to their devices to an uncouth actor. And a major vector for this type of infiltration is email deception. And I'd break this down into two categories. The first is the fake email, the impersonation. So when I open my email service, if I get an email from someone I recognize, I just see an email like, you have an email from Fred Reed, my boss, the Reed in Reed Longyear. And let's say I wake up one morning, open my Outlook, and I have an email from Fred Reed. And the email says, I'm having trouble logging in remotely. Can I get your password, please, Greg, so I can log in? Well, I want to be helpful to my boss, so I respond and I give him my login. He says, thank you very much, Greg. And I've actually just given my login to a fraudster, to a hacker. How did that happen? Well, impersonation is that the fraudster might create a new email, something like fredreed420@gmail.com, that if I'm not looking closely, I just see an email from Fred Reed and respond. But it's not Fred Reed's actual email, and it's not actually him. So it's always good to double check the actual email address that's contacted you. Don't rely solely on your email system to identify whom you're communicating with. Another type is the compromised email chain reaction. And in this case, the email is actually from Fred Reed's real email. but it's been compromised and it is now being used to blast everyone on his contacts list, everyone in his network, with an attempt to phish other information. And the way this type of email would look is, out of the blue, I get an email from Fred Reed saying, please open and sign this document. It's very general. I wasn't expecting to receive it. I don't even know what the document is. But if I'm not careful, and I'm thinking, oh, I need to be helpful, that's my boss, Fred Reed, or my trusted attorney, I'll just open this random link included in this email. It says it's from DocuSign, but it's not actually from DocuSign. And I might have just inadvertently given them access. And so this type of technique relies on people going quickly, not thinking through, hey, wait a minute, Fred, I don't know what you're talking about. What document? And so fraudsters use very general emails, and general emails that ask you for immediate action. No time for questions, no time to call and chat. You have to sign it now. And so what you should do is ask the question. Take the time to call if you get something unexpected or get something that doesn't sit right in your gut. Another type of scam is the search engine poisoning scam. Now, what does that mean? You go to Google or perhaps to Bing if you're a major Microsoft loyalist, and you search for information on a topic. Or in my practice, maybe I'm looking for a template document, an example real estate contract. So I Google template real estate contract, and I get the first result. And it says, oh, go here and download this template. So easy. We have it all prepared for you. But wait, search engine results can be gamified. Sometimes the first couple results in a search engine can be outright bought. People pay a fee to show up earlier in the search results. Or in other cases, fraudsters craft their web pages to be seemingly accurate responses to specific inquiries, something like providing a template. And if I'm not careful, and I go to that website and download their template, I didn't actually download a template real estate contract. I downloaded a Trojan horse virus that just gave them access to my system. And so it's important when looking at search engine results is that your web browser up by the address band will actually have a little circle that will tell you if the certificate for that website is trusted and if it's secure. And it's good to double check that certificate. And sometimes a web browser will give you a warning page. You go to a website and a page will pop up and say, hey, wait a second, this is not a trusted link. Are you sure? And the answer should almost always be no, you're not sure. Put the car in reverse and get out of there. You'll be able to find that template somewhere else without taking an unreasonable risk. Another type of attack is the multi-factor authentication attack. And this one's really insidious because multi-factor authentication is a common security protocol to prevent fraud. But the fraudsters are adapting, and so they're actually trying to exploit the MFA system. And so one type of this is that the fraudster will impersonate the IT desk, for example. So you'll get a notification that someone's trying to log in through your multi-factor authentication. Then you'll get a call, and the call will say, oh, hi, this is David at Amazon. We're just doing a routine test and we're going through your multi-factor authentication. You should have just received a code. Can you give me the code, please? Do not give them the code. That is almost certainly not Amazon, and they are almost certainly not running a routine test. Another type of scam is just the multi-factor authentication fatigue attack. And so what that is someone's trying to get in through MFA. And if you've used multi-factor authentication, you get a text with a code or your phone pops up a little bubble that says click yes to agree. And what they do is they just try to wear you down. They just keep sending you codes, keep sending you prompts over and over and over. It's exhausting. And some people break down and just hit yes so that the attack stops. That's not what you should do. It's extremely frustrating and it's exhausting, but it's important to hold the line, to always decline those requests. And if you're suffering an attack like this, where you're just getting multi-factor authentication prompts over and over and over, contact security at that service And, you know, it might be important to block access attempts. That's one way to get to attack the stop without giving the fraudster access. Now, AI is a force multiplier for all these effects because AI can make very realistic, very natural sounding emails. It can design web pages that look so sophisticated, look so accurate. So it makes all of these techniques more dangerous by making them more plausible. And so when it comes to AI, so often the devil is in the details. And so that's why if you get an email pretending to be Fred asking for your login information, call Fred Reed. Speak to the man himself, because it might be an AI impersonating him, maybe even impersonating him well. So speak to the man himself. Or if a search engine poisoning, check the security certificate on the website. Don't just trust it because the web page looks so polished and looks so professional. Now, another type of scam is a longer-term trust scam that has the quite morbid name, the pig fattening scam. And what this is that the fraudster or the criminal actually develops a long-term relationship with you. Really, they pretend to be your friend. Is one vector for this type of attack is through online dating, where you see someone's digital profile, just their photos, and you text them. You never get to see them in person, but through this online portal, you seem to connect so deeply. Another type of this is there's actually a version of this where someone sends a seemingly wrong number or wrong email address text, please bring the brownies to Sharon's house by 10 a.m. And you respond, oh, I'm sorry, it seems you have the wrong number. They reply back, oh, so sorry, yes, wrong number. But hey, while we're talking, how are you? What's your name? My name is Jeremy. Do you have any pets? And they sort of establish this rapport with you just out of the blue. They pretend to be your friend. And then it always twists. If Jeremy is really a friend, he probably will not ask you to invest in his novel cryptocurrency company. But if it's a fraudster, that's where the conversation will inevitably turn. Once they have your trust, once they've developed a relationship, they will ask you to send them money. They will ask you to invest in their new business, or as I mentioned, ask you to invest in their new fantastic novel cryptocurrency scheme. Now, if you say, hey, I'd like to look into this, they will reply with immediate urgency. You have to invest now. You have to send money to me now. It's all so urgent. No time to think, no time to ask questions. And that is the red flag. As needless to say, anything you send to the fraudster is gone. It's just gone. Now, a lot of these schemes are used to get access to your system. As I mentioned once, what you might be familiar with, a Trojan horse virus, which is where the virus is not the thing itself that compromises your system, but it opens the door for more insidious malware to get into your system. And one common tactic, once the criminals have access, is ransomware and cyber blackmail. Ransomware is a type of malware that maybe locks down your system, denies you access, or even just makes it frustrating to use, constant pop-ups, or it's running super, super slow. And then they offer a ransom to lift that block or to lift that malware. Cyber blackmail is very similar. Someone gets access to your system, scrapes all your personal data, and then says, I will not release this on the dark web if you pay me money. They might advertise cybercrime services as we broke into your system, we took your data, and now you can hire us. Hire us to go after your competitors, go after other people. Or sometimes they don't talk to you at all. They gain access, they take your information, and they sell it to the highest bidder. And it's that third party, maybe a data broker, who's the one who actually misuses your data. And the damages for cybercriminality are substantial. Is on average between 15 to 25,000 with insurance coverage, or over 50,000 on average without coverage. For the long-term scams like pig fattening, there's news articles about people losing everything, all their retirement, their life savings. It's catastrophic. For something like a ransomware attack, the Seattle Public Libraries suffered a ransomware attack just this year, and the average downtime is 279 days if you ever get access back. And then there's the emotional toll. It feels awful to be tricked. And people who, even though the scam is so profitable, it's happening all over the place, people feel such incredible shame when it happens that they might not ever reveal that this has happened. So that's the scary side. But fortunately, we have my partner Meng here to talk about what you can do.
Thank you, Greg. Screen here. Okay. Now, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's presentation. My name is Meng Chi, and I'm an attorney in Reed Longyear's Estate Planning and Probate Practice Group. And as Greg presented on the current cybercrime threats, I will be presenting on some best practices to kind of help people stop from becoming a victim of fraud and scammers. First, as the old saying goes, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And the Federal Trade Commission put together a list of common warning signs that you can kind of see across multiple different types of scams, and the public can use to kind of be on the alert for and hopefully prevent themselves or others from falling victim to a scam and granting access to potentially a bad actor, such as in the malware situations over at the Seattle Public Library and other situations. Now, these include receiving unsolicited communications, even from organizations that a person may know or already deal with. Because of technology has gotten so good, i.e. through email address mislabeling, as Greg alluded to earlier, in terms of people may get an email address that's very close to what someone would expect from a trusted source. Phone number spoofing, so the actual phone number that's listed on a caller ID can easily be faked. And now also AI generated content can appear so genuine as to trick a lot of different people into potentially clicking a malicious link or opening an unsafe attachment and or granting people access or even transferring money. Next is communications that mention that there's a problem or a prize, and there's usually pressure to act immediately, as Greg alluded to as well. So these are all kind of hallmarks here where, like if someone contacts you with saying that there's a problem for you or someone else, like the IRS is threatening to take seize your assets, or a loved one is in jail, etc. Those are usually things that should be kind of the initial warning signs, and be aware if they sit there and start to say you need to act immediately or it's very urgent that you act. And so the time pressure coupled with the social desire, as Greg mentioned previously with the social engineering, especially for a parent to help a loved one, or to potentially claim a prize or prevent a person, can easily prevent a person from recognizing a scam, because you're caught in this mental model to sit there and actually respond very quickly, because it's kind of ingrained in all of us based on the social fabric that we live in and have adopted. Next is access to devices or personal account information or specific payment options or methods are requested. So generally speaking, most people and companies, reputable companies and or organizations, are not going to request access to your devices or request your personal or account information, because usually that's more liability to these companies, so they're not going to want to do that. And then B, they usually already have, reputable companies that you're working with should already have your personal information in their system. So immediately be suspicious if you receive unsolicited communications where they're wanting to verify your information, and that should immediately just start to raise alarm bells. And secondarily here is specific payment methods. I don't know about most people, but working with creditors or the IRS, I find that traditional payment methods are almost always acceptable, usually check or credit card payments. So you should always be concerned, especially if you hear someone saying, oh, you need to pay in cryptocurrency, or you need to purchase some gift cards, or using a wire transfer service like Western Union or MoneyGram, or payment applications such as Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal. Most reputable organizations do not necessarily require that these types of payment methods are utilized. And so always, whenever you see these types of warning signs, please pause and think through if a reputable company, organization that you work with, or potentially would work with, would request payment in this type of method. And next, in regards to some of the foundational best practices that I think we are all have been kind of told about and would help with definitely with some of the making sure that we're not easy prey for a lot of fraudsters or scammers who are looking to compromise our systems. These are good reminders here, which are to always have strong and unique passwords for each online account and use encryption where available. And because of the added complexity of having different passwords that are unique for different accounts as well as platforms, password managers may be a good option here to kind of help manage that complexity. Something I also talk about with some of our clients is that depending upon the use case scenario, sometimes writing down their people's logins and securely storing it may be an option there, but it's kind of dependent on each individual use case scenario. Next is to use multi-factor authentication, as Greg alluded to earlier, to really make it tough for someone to compromise an account if they already know your password, because then they would have to compromise either an email or a cell phone to get these one-time passwords. And so using enabling multi-factor authentication is highly recommended. Last is to keep your software and your systems up to date. And that means setting your computers and other electronic devices to auto-update when security patches and system updates are available, including receiving updates to virus definitions or malware definitions as well, just to make sure that your system is completely up to date and that it's not vulnerable in any form or fashion from past vulnerabilities that have been identified. This leads to our suggested best practices here, which are very much in alignment with some of the warning signs that were talked about earlier. And so one of the recommendations here is to use call blocking software and spam filters to stop unwanted calls, text, and emails. This goes hand in hand with what Greg was talking about earlier in terms of where people, scammers or fraudsters, may sit there and just bombard you with unwanted communications. So using technology and services to kind of help limit those so they don't even get through to you is a good suggested best practice. Next is not to provide your personal information or access to any of your devices to any person or organization you do not know or did not initiate contact with. Also, resisting the pressure to act immediately and instead, if possible, take some time, a day or so, to locate genuine contact information. As Greg alluded to with search engine hacking, where fraudsters may be trying to take the topmost search result. Here, if you're sitting there and you're able to locate a past statement from the company that's purporting to say that they're wanting information from you, use that contact information from that statement or invoice to actually contact them at a different time. That way you're ensuring that you're contacting the actual correct entity and not someone who contacted you out of the blue and maybe using technology to spoof a different phone number or represent a different email address there. Next is please do not transfer or deposit money or deposit checks for anyone you do not know. Again, back to the earlier example of, if you're using, being requested to use different types of platforms or, send money, that should be the immediate that you are not expecting or have not initiated. That is something that you should not do. And then before taking any requested action, please stop and talk to someone you trust about the situation. And just to kind of really quickly tie off here, we had a recent scenario where a prior client contacted our firm looking for a criminal defense attorney referral. Upon contacting the person who was, it became readily apparent that they were likely the victim of a potential scam. And the background of the scenario is that the person was contacted by someone that was supposedly their child who was crying and sat there and said that they were in jail and that they'd been in an accident. And then the call got cut off. A subsequent call was placed by an individual purporting to be a public defense attorney representing the child. And they explained further that the child had been in a horrible car accident and that the other driver, a pregnant individual, was severely injured, and that the child was in jail and had already been arraigned, and that they needed a bond of $95,000 to get out of jail. But that the parent could put up only $9,500, and the child could exit jail later that day. And so the individual sat there and said that someone would be in contact with them and to have their information ready to make the payment. Thankfully, we were able to contact this prior client who was in the process of ordering an Uber to go down to the municipal jail or county jail to see their child. And after kind of talking with them through it and requesting that they contact their child, actually give them a phone call, they did. And right then and there, the child picked up and sat there and said, "I'm fine. I'm sitting at home right now." And thankfully, we were able to create a pattern interrupt, if you will, in the scam so that the past client there was able to get out of the social engineered story that they were placed into by the scammers. And so this is the type of thing where the best practices can come in handy, and things like just even talking to a trusted third party to have a conversation about the situation can potentially save an individual thousands of dollars and potentially having their identity stolen. And so really quickly, the last page of my presentation here, I just want to make sure that I did show the helpful information reporting resources that are available through the Washington Attorney General's website. They have some great information about current scams that are affecting Washington residents, as well as how to respond to them, as well as how to report them, as well. And the Federal Trade Commission also has additional websites here and resources for reporting fraud or reporting identity theft. One of the last one there about what to do if you're scammed is a great article. And again, it's just trying to get additional information and getting set up for success, because it's a wild and woolly world out there. It's becoming more and more complex with technology. And so I just want to make sure people have these additional resources here to reference in the future. Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much for that list. And I guess we could just post that in the news section as well.
Yeah, definitely.
A separate item. All right. So again, thank you all for joining us. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us with any questions, and happy to help you. Again, it is National Estate Planning Awareness Week. So encourage you to take a look at your estate plan. If you don't have an estate plan, to contact us about preparing one or updating it as the case may be. And thank you all, and have a great day.